Hey, Scott. There we go.
Hey.
I forgot to add you back to the thing.
Are we live at the moment?
We are live, so
Yeah.
anything you say can and will be used against you, probably, or something like that.
All right.
Yeah, all
Good
the
morning.
usual disclaimers. It is really nice to have you on, man. So, yeah, for anybody who's like not aware, Scott joined WebPageTest. It started Monday. Started working on stuff. Been super, super excited to make it happen. So,
Yeah,
this
this
is
is great.
It's
It's
good. You
it's
have to say.
a tool that I've used for I don't know how many years. It's really fun getting to work on it and be part of the team now. So yeah.
Well, that was kind of my thing too, right? Like I used that for, I don't know how long, like at least a decade. It's a little older than that, but yeah. So then like getting to work on it was super cool. So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
awesome. So yeah, and so of course it makes sense to have you, jump on, and it's also I think probably welcome for folks. I know we did the one with Chris Coyer, but other than that, I think it's been my mug the entire time. So they're probably just really happy to have somebody who's not Tim, and it should cut down on the sound effects and random noises that I make too. Now that there's somebody to talk to, and I have to, yeah.
Is there a sound effects board that I did?
There is not a sound effect. I make the sound effects with my mouth. We don't need a board here, Scott.
Okay.
This is yeah. Awesome. So I think so we talked a little bit beforehand. The last one that we did like this whole donut thing for the first time, which I thought was kind of nice, which was a way of sort of just, highlighting something that we saw in the community that we thought was cool or from a performance perspective. So last time it was, I'm a big fan of NPR's text only site. I think that's really cool. So I thought we could kind of start with that. And I think you and I chatted a little bit beforehand about a couple things that kind of came up, I guess, that got chatted about recently on Twitter and stuff like that I thought were worthy of at least calling a little bit of attention to.
Some performance community updates, hot topics.
Yeah. A little bit of hot topics, a little bit of drama on one of them, but we don't need the. I'm not really into that. I'm not much of a drama person.
No, this isn't a drama show.
Thanks, man. That's good. No, it's not. If it gets dramatic, we have problems here. Yeah. So if I can, I'm just gonna zoom in though on a couple things. So this whole thing was on Twitter, and this is less to me the interesting between. I'm less interested in sort of the Next versus Astro thing, and more so the highlighting of what Astro itself was doing. So this kind of came up. Somebody had rebuilt their blog using Astro, which I have not played around with much. But their homepage route dropped from 138K to 7.6K. The all posts dropped a ton as well. You can see it gets out onto the screen really quick here. Astro's got this whole concept apparently of trying to get that 0K kilobyte client-side JavaScript out, as the default. And I think that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. It seems like a really neat pattern, kind of deferring where you apply the JavaScript on the page until it's needed, I guess, right?
Yeah. And I guess because you and I chatted, we haven't played with this yet. Like neither one of us have kicked the tires on this. I know you had
disclaimer.
You had a disclaimer. Which was around the accessibility stuff, right? Like there was something that.
No, I meant disclaimer as in I have not done a lot of tinkering with Astro myself either. But no, I was asking kind of open-endedly on Twitter this morning about it though. I'm just sort of curious if anyone has dug into any potential accessibility kind of pitfalls, drawbacks of waiting to apply JavaScript to portions of the page that aren't, in view, so to speak, yet. And, I wanted to follow it up real quickly with to be clear, I don't know of any issues, but, in the past, we've seen patterns like this, right? Where we defer parts of the page or behavior or whatever it may be, images from loading until they're quote unquote visible. And whatever that means kind of varies from technique to technique, but sometimes that has had accessibility impacts that weren't expected, like the content visibility, was it CSS property, which is I think fixed now, right? But originally,
it is, yeah. So Marcy Sutton wrote a really good post about that. When it first kind of popped up, which is, content visibility, this, the ability to skip, element rendering work to kind of speed up the initial display of a page and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And she pointed out, some accessibility concerns with the update is that it sounds like they took care of it, which is great. But I guess to her point here too, like it's the lesson that still kind of stands, right? Like just, as we've said plenty of times on the Twitch thing, it's not like performance for the sake of making things faster. You're doing it because you're hoping that provides a better user experience. And,
Right.
that means you got to balance it against things like accessibility as well and make sure that you're not, ignoring that.
Yeah. And I guess, some concerns that I would think of just upfront would be, there, whether or not parts of the page are visible, in like a sighted user sort of context might be different than other ways you might be able to reach elements on the page through assistive technology. So, just making sure that things are meaningful if you happen to access parts of the DOM that aren't necessarily enhanced yet. And again, I haven't really tinkered with this framework, so it's more of a question. But I think, just in general, these patterns, I think they're really neat. And I was curious about it.
I think that the trend is nice to see, right? Like I like the, coming right out with like building it with less client-side framework. Another thing that popped up was the Evan Yu from Vue talking about they added like an MPA mode, a multi-page app, which I still think is a little bit of a weird name, but multi-page app, which is basically, traditional website. In VitePress, which is basically a static site generator. So now if you're using that flag, like it just strips out all that. It's 0 KB by default, right? So it changes it. So you're kind of having to add the client-side stuff. And like, generally speaking, I just like the trend of frameworks competing on performance and how little JavaScript we can ship.
Yeah,
I think that's awesome.
Good place to be, right?
Yeah. So that we thought was a donut-worthy celebration. Is like that trend. I think that's cool. So I think we were going to talk about some e-commerce stuff, right? 'Tis the season.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good performance topic, right? A lot of common issues that are relevant to e-commerce sites specifically.
Yeah. And so, the thing too is, right, like this is the right time of the year to be doing it because like everybody with e-com they're getting close to that code freeze season, where, they don't want to ship out new features and stuff for fear of breaking things because the holiday season is huge for digital commerce stuff. And so you got, there's that. And then the other thing is like this time of year when I was doing consulting, I don't know if it was similar because I know you did a lot of perf consulting and work like that too. But I would always get an influx of inquiries kind of around this time because you'd get your companies that either wanted to sort of make these last minute fixes and performance before the holiday season hit, or folks who were taking the code freeze opportunity to do things like some performance work behind the scenes and stuff like that.
Yeah, changes the priorities of what you get to work on. Suddenly the main part of the site is frozen, so you can start to hit the backlog. And,
exactly. Yeah, you don't have to be as feature driven for a little bit.
Right.
And there's even, I've heard, like, I know some shops will even do things like disable the majority, if not all, of third-party resources and stuff like that, just to sort of limit the risk during the holiday season as well. But
yeah, I recall some clients in the past having certain, landing pages, I guess, that were sort of free to edit throughout the holiday season, but it was not necessarily tied to the same data sources anymore. So it was more of like a manual process. And that, editing raw HTML kind of brings up whole new, entirely different challenges for performance, like getting the markup right, because a lot of the like images, for example, responsive image markup can be pretty tricky to write by hand.
And it can be long too. Wasn't there actually, there was somebody, I want to say, and I'm blanking on it. So somebody, if chat knows what I'm talking about, I thought somebody had posted something recently that showed like, basically an image with just a ton of different variations inside the responsive aspect of it. So it kind of really created this massively bloated HTML. And I remember going through the whole responsive images standards debacle. Feels like maybe an app's word. It was an intense period of time, but like going through that whole thing, and I really like how it ended up. But now there's the balance and the nuance of like how many different sizes and variations and when they do they get applied and stuff like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. And which format to use versus, between picture and image and source set, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's also like, one of the things we see a lot too, from the lazy loading perspective, because loading is sort of a native attribute that was only very recently added, is a lot of JavaScript driven stuff. Matt, hi, Matt. Yeah. So Matt dug it up. Yeah, this is the thing. So there's a whole I think they dove into basically in this post this whole idea of like, I don't know how many different sizes and stuff were there, but it was ridiculous. So
yeah, I guess at a certain point you have a markup that starts to compete with the image size.
There's an upper limit. Yeah. There's an upper limit.
Yeah.
What are some of the other like ecom stuff that you walked into?
Yeah, well, images are a big deal, and you mentioned lazy loading. I think that's another one of those viewport related challenges, right? Where unexpected things can happen, like loading equals lazy applied to a bunch of images down the page. Maybe those images aren't available. Like, for example, a friend of mine was taking screenshots of full height pages recently, and all of the images were gone.
As you do. Yeah.
Right. So maybe that's not a big concern for the average user, but it's interesting how these optimizations have little ripples like that. Yeah, I guess images are a big deal. One of them that I was thinking about pertains to more like layout stability and having width and height attributes on your images. That's become kind of back in good practice. We pulled those off for responsive images a number of years ago, and now they actually help, right, for providing a sort of box to draw for where the image will be while it's still loading, and that helps keep the page stable while the image hasn't loaded yet, right? So I've seen a lot of cases where landing pages on e-commerce sites don't have those attributes yet, and you get a lot of jumpiness as the page is loading in.
Yeah, it's a pretty common one. It's probably the most, that and dynamic content like banners or ads are probably the most common CLS issues that I see.
Right.
Like when profiling stuff.
Banner that pushes everything down.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, you had a show recently that talked about client-side A/B testing and third-party scripts, but that's a big layout stability issue too, right? I mean, it's first of all just a delay of seeing anything at all that's usable, but sometimes there can be a mismatch in sizes of what the layout had before and after the change, and you get things moving around.
Sure.
Yeah, those are some that come to mind. I mean, there's always the classic blocking scripts and styles, and I think a lot of e-commerce sites, especially ones that are sort of in that classic dynamic database kind of driven stack, just have piles of scripts and styles at the top, and you add plugins and they for example. Yeah,
it's a big challenge for that architecture, especially on a lot of the e-com platforms, because like the way they work, if you're propping up the site through one of these sort of pre-baked systems, is you're often pulling in sort of installing apps, installing themes, installing all this stuff. And with everything you install, most of them probably are defaulting to that render blocking status, it seems. So it's a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to, we looked ahead. We just grabbed a couple web page test runs of some random e-com sites that looked like they had interesting stuff. So the caveat is that neither Scott and I have actually did a deep analysis of any of these yet. We just literally spent maybe 30 seconds on each run just to be like, is there something interesting to look at? So maybe we pull up a few and just see if we can find some of the examples, because I think there are some examples of some of the stuff we've talked about, and then how it's impacting them, maybe what we would do to address it, if that works.
Yeah. Okay. Also probably some good examples out there. I haven't looked at the ones that you re-ran or pre-ran.
Scott, I sent them to you 5 minutes ago. No, it's okay. Yeah. All right. It's fair. So we do get a request down there too. Oh, maybe what is that one? Quince.com.
Okay.
Well, all right. We might have to give that a shot. See. All right. So what is Quince? Just really quick, just to see if it's something we should run off in the background here.
Is it one Quince?
Oh,
Oh,
is it one Quince? Did I do it? I thought it
well,
was this one.
got it. Yeah.
Oh, no, maybe it is one Quince. It is this one Quince, right? I'm like, okay, yeah, we can run that in the background.
All right.
Oh man,
Nice little, what is it? Clothing retail?
looks like it's a high quality. Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Luxury essential clothing.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. I always like the minimal. I'm a really boring. Like I like the minimalist plain color clothes typically. So I kind of it'll work for me. All right, I'll run that in the background here while we're kind of looking at one of the other ones. Then that's an extra live special. I like it.
Yeah. What
Do
else?
you want to start with Etsy?
Oh, Etsy. Well, they're great.
Etsy is great. Etsy has like for those who haven't like known, like Etsy has a long history of being really involved in performance. Actually, WebPageTest as well. And for years, like when they did Velocity conference, like you just kind of expected you'd have like a handful of talks from Etsy engineers talking about all the cool stuff they were doing. And that's kind of continued now. I know with the team that they've got over there, Sergey and Katie Sealer-Miller and a bunch of other folks have done like some great work. There was a whole thing where they transitioned from React to Preact recently, which was cool. Yeah.
Yeah. They do good work.
They do. So I thought we'd look for them just at the homepage here.
Yeah.
Ran a test.
This is
cable. I'm sorry, desktop, mobile. This is mobile. Yeah, Tim can't talk. This is emulated G4 on a 4G network. So this is their mobile view. And there's like one thing that jumped out right away that I thought was good, is if we jump to the median run, is this. Like there's only 2 render blocking resources, and they're both these CSS here, but nothing, like none of the JavaScript, none of the third-party stuff, none of that is loaded in a blocking way at all. Yeah. Which I thought was like, you don't see it as often, right? That's kind of cool.
Doesn't really happen by accident. There's some good optimization work going on here, clearly.
Yeah, and the other thing I didn't notice until just now is this, like where the CSS lines up here in the HTML, like it's not actually waiting for the entirety of the HTML to get back, which is nice.
I'm looking at the comments here. Error message. Okay.
Oh, error message in Chrome, Tim. What do we? Oh, yeah, I think it's because I'm not logged into my. I'm just not logged into my profile or something like that. It's okay.
On the browser Chrome. Got it.
What's that?
Oh, right on the browser Chrome.
Yeah, exactly. Up in the back corner there. So I was going to see, like, is this coming through? It is H2. I was just curious if they were pushing anything, but it doesn't look like there's push being used here. I don't see any headers or anything like that from that end. So they must just be kind of flushing that out, huh? Or at least getting like that initial bit of the HTML, like the head markup or whatever, and then letting the browser kind of make some requests from there, which is nice.
Yeah.
That's nice to see.
It kicks off right when the first darker blue is in there, right?
Yeah, it's a nice head start, right? Because like when for those like who aren't familiar, like the darker blue is when the content's being downloaded, the lighter blue is when it's queued up. And so, yeah, we've got this tiny little slice coming up in front, and that's enough to let the browser get a head start on grabbing the CSS. Looks like it starts to find an image and request that from a separate domain at the time. But all of that head start occurs, before the final HTML comes out, which is nice.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that looks good. Nice, tall, slim waterfall.
Yeah, that's what you always like to see, right?
Right.
Like even they've got like a fairly clear divide in the waterfall. I'll zoom out because for once it's actually easier to see zoomed out. But like this chunk right up here, which is like, they're getting stuff out, getting rendered early. This seems to be all like fonts, images, JavaScript, CSS. And then all the third-party stuff is pretty well pushed off actually until that's that second sort of wave, which is nice though, because it happens after page content, all that jazz.
They're getting a lot of images downloaded pretty quickly too. I wonder if they have some responsive images in the markup.
They might. Yeah, none of these are very big, like 20K 21K, 15K. Yeah, those are pretty. We can look. We have the technology.
Take a look.
Well, here we go. Hold on. Where's the actual image here?
The video, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, those all look like videos.
Okay, let's find an image. So this is just, I mean, it looks like a static image, unless there's something going on.
Yeah.
There's nothing like responsive.
Could be a smaller image across all viewports.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe they're just kind of going with the small formats and stuff there, which is, still smart. Good stuff. Okay. The one thing that
desktop here.
What's that?
But you were looking at a kind of
that's a valid point, Scott.
Yeah.
Thanks for keeping
it wasn't my point. I saw it in the comments.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, thanks, Sia. Appreciate that. Good call. Good call. Let's have a look. So these were all video. Or no, now we've got image here. Okay, so they probably are doing some sort of dynamic stuff, right? Because like if you look at the attributes here, see there's a data source and a data was processed. Both of those kind of suggest that there may be some JavaScript, although it's caught right away. If this was one of those images that comes back here, maybe that was a later on in the waterfall.
Yeah.
But that suggests almost JavaScript gets involved, right?
Sometimes it can be, a swap to show a different source on hover, maybe a zoomed in source, depending on how they're using it. But yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, we can definitely see some video stuff happening there.
Some degree of JavaScript involved here. Because again, those data attributes, kind of a free form thing, do what you will with them. Browser doesn't do anything by default.
Right. Now, the one thing so the start render and the largest contentful paint looked really good, right? Like very few in the critical rendering path, getting stuff out really nice.
Mm-hmm.
The cumulative layout shift had a little bit, and this one I think jumps into one of the issues that you were talking about. Because if we jump and look here, like where these shifts are occurring.
Yeah, maybe some width and height attributes. Although
a little bit of font down here, but the big one is all image related.
Yeah. Yeah, so that could be a lack of width and height attributes. It could be that the images are being, their sources are being set by JavaScript. Any number of things like that. But I would assume maybe starting with, the attributes would at least draw a little box for where the image will one day sit whenever it loads.
At least put like a placeholder on the HTML themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can go back to Chrome, disable JavaScript, and just see. No, it is there in the markup. So yeah, it's just missing those height and width attributes.
Yeah, that could do a lot.
Yeah,
especially since it's right at the top of the page. First thing you see.
So the nice thing about that too, though, is I always like the width height one. I think we see it a lot, like we said, but it's also like usually a pretty straightforward thing to address. And then in the case of like their site here, that is 0.184 of the 0.187 total score that they have on CLS. Yeah. So like instantly you get some width and height attributes on there. The CLS score goes from being kind of in that needs improvement range here to being really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Ideally, low effort and big impact kind of change to make.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah, that looks good. So what other were you?
What's that?
I was going to say, what other sites did you?
Yeah, I was going to say if there was some, we can jump off to another one here. So Costco was another one. Because there was a couple interesting things that jumped out on this. So this is a PDP page, so product display page. Again, the mobile view, but it is this one. So if I do a fresh page load, so you can see kind of, well, it's jumping around on me just cause it can. There's a lot of movement, and I don't know if it's like remembering state or no. Here we go. Okay, so not too bad. Although at the end there's still another little shift there, kind of at the end.
Yeah.
All right.
not as easy to see from that view. Maybe a film strip would show it a little better.
Let's do a film strip. Always like the film strip. All right, we'll put kind of that 0.1 second. Like, I'm just curious, what is we've never actually seen Scott's flow on this. Do you start at the film strip usually?
I almost feel like an upcoming design change could be to make that a little more visible, like the link to the film. I just love the film strip feature. I mean, it's always like, when I did agency work, this was like the go-to view, right? Because it's so easy to communicate what's going on in this metaphor, right? Where there's like a series of images, like you're watching a movie of the page load. So yeah, this is one of the places I like this feature more than just looking at the numbers.
That's fair. I mean, I like the lineup as well. I like my favorite part is the being able to scan and kind of line up that red bar to see exactly where in like the film strip, like when something snaps.
Yeah, down below in the waterfall. Yeah, and that's really handy when you notice a blip, like maybe a layout shift that's pretty dramatic happens. Then you can go down and try to figure out what happens in the waterfall at that moment. It's really handy.
Yeah. So, like, for example, if I look at the waterfall, there looks like there is a shift over here. That's that orange dotted line at about 6.5 seconds or so. So if we come back, but yeah, so the film strip makes it pretty obvious that it's, image related, right? You can see where the shift, if we've highlighted the box where the shift occurs, an image pops up, which wasn't there before.
Yeah. So once again, I think we've got a similar scenario with this one, right? Where there's no aspect ratio drawn for the image, where it's going to sit in the layout when it eventually loads. So maybe width and height could be, what they need here.
It also looks like it might be, there's something going on too with this. So the other thing with like the lining up, right, is being able to see like these little pink chunks. There's some big chunk of JavaScript execution from this script that kicks off right before that shift, which doesn't necessarily mean that this script is like loading the image, because I think it's, one of these things that's being queued up before, it looks like. But there is something about that script in this case, like it is in the body parser blocking, which means that whenever the browser gets to it, it's blocking things off. So something in the way that's loading in this case too is sort of delaying the appearance of that image potentially.
Yeah. And it could, someone mentioned in the comments that sometimes CSS could be responsible for some of those delays too, animations.
True.
Yeah, but I think you're right here. There's a clue going on with that pink chunk right there.
Yeah, and it's both Sergey and Matt pointed out, there is a lot of pink, that's over like this section over here, which is DOM content loaded. So there's a lot of work happening during the course of that event. Like we've got a really thick, like almost, let me extend how long this runs out if I can. That's like a 2 seconds of DOM content reloaded related work. And usually that's like, things like J.Crew or something like that, right? There where it was everything kind of waiting for that queue up.
Mm-hmm. You see the chunk JS there. It's like your Webpack separation, right?
Yep. So they've got some Webpack stuff going off, breaking these little chunks here. Yeah, I'd be curious to see. I'm going to keep this one open, and because it wouldn't be a Twitch without me ending with like 30 tabs open. But I'm going to jump to just out of curiosity, sort of the processing breakdown. Okay, so we got like 6.2 seconds spending on function stuff, the evaluating the script 4.2989. Let's do the total blocking time view, actually. I think that's what I actually want. I'm just curious to see like the attribution for a lot of this work. So a lot of it's first party stuff.
Yeah.
And then
React, right? There was a
it looked like it. Yeah, if we go back, I've got that little JavaScript detector thingy running in the browser, and we've got Bootstrap, jQuery UI, React, Modernizer, a whole bunch of stuff kind of running. But yeah, so you've got some probably some jQuery legacy, legacy, as I'm saying legacy because I'm assuming they're migrating to React is why that's kind of there, but probably some of that handling this, and then
that's typical. Or sometimes jQuery comes in with a widget like a reviews tool or live chat or something like that.
And then whatever JS Narvar is, that's
it's a ship.js.
It's a what? Ship.js?
Are you looking at line 207? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. I thought you were like there was like a pun involved or something, and you were doing like a. Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. No, it's good. So here's this DOM content loaded stuff. That looks like it's the DOM content loaded is specifically. Look at this RWD, responsive web design static assets, and all.min.
It's responsive design's fault. I'll file a bug with Ethan.
We'll have to tell Ethan. He messed it up.
Yeah.
All right. So that's kind of interesting, though. So there's a lot of like stuff that probably first party they can clean up to take care of a lot of the extra work that's happening on this page.
Yeah. Interesting.
The other thing, too, that always is interesting to see is I think that OCSP validation check is always interesting. I think we called it. I think it came up last time on the NPR site as well. But that's that extended validation certificate. Mm-hmm. And so anytime that's there, like the browser has to go and make sure that everything is okay, and everything's valid and secure and whatnot. But it does mean that then the SSL negotiation process always goes. It gets long. So you can see how it lines up, and it's pushing off that SSL for the main HTML in this case to be 777 milliseconds.
Yeah, that's significant.
Yeah, it's a good chunk.
Yeah. But, there's a lot of good things going on here. Like we mentioned the JavaScript, but at least it's deferred. All that stuff is happening after the page is visible.
True.
So it's likely blocking interactivity, right, for a couple seconds in there. But
yeah, they're also doing similar. Like you can also see the first little sliver of HTML that comes across, and suddenly, the browser is able to queue up a bunch of stuff. Like little chunks nice there, nothing delayed or waiting there.
All good things.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Good job, Costco.
All right. Do we have the one that was running in the background? Do you want to this one is completely, we have seen nothing from this.
It's a mystery. Yeah.
It is. Let's look at it. Okay.
Let's see. LCP has some high timing to look at.
Yeah. Now, first contentful pane is fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's pretty quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, the LCP gets pushed out a bit.
And it looks like we've got a modal blocking the majority of the view.
Which may be, yeah. Let's jump to run 7 and do our film strip view, since that's where Scott likes to operate. I'm good with that. Okay, so Rocky is now hereby banned from any further streams, unfortunately. Assigning things to Tim automatically is not encouraged. Actually, the ability to do a waterfall zoom on a mouse wheel would be kind of nice. There's actually a few things I'd like to.
Yeah.
Scott and I might have been chatting a little bit yesterday, in fact, about some waterfall related stuff. Maybe we were talking about it.
So many ideas.
Yeah.
So, I mean, immediately looking at this, the like you said, the first content shows up pretty snappy. 1.3 seconds. That's good.
In fact, there's no render blocking resources here that I can see, unless there is one bug in the render blocking signal for Chrome that was fixed, but I don't know if like we have to do a little additional plumbing to kind of clean it up. Where preloads were marked as non-blocking, even if they were loaded in a blocking way. So maybe but no, I guess no, it's not though. I was going to say that, but then if I look at when everything occurs, all of these things get downloaded after we get something onto the screen. So no, they're not render blocking. So no, that's great.
Yeah.
Rock on.
Yeah,
that's
good.
rare to see. You do not see usually like 0 is not a very common thing to run into. Not even CSS.
Yeah, suspicious.
Means well, suspicious, yeah, or awesome. My guess is y'all got this inlined, huh? Yep, right there is our CSS inlined right into the page.
Nice. Yep.
Yeah, that's always cool because then you're not like having to go out and grab it. It's just kind of there in that initial HTML, which is kind of cool to see too.
Yep. Better than a whole second round trip while you already have content that you could render. So that's great.
And it sounds like this one is built on Gatsby with styled components, is what we're hearing. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, that's looking really good.
So yeah, what happens later in that film strip? Because up front it looked pretty good.
Yeah, to get to the LCP thing, what's happening with that?
Okay. So we have a little what was that, around 2 seconds? Yeah. Some more content coming in.
Yeah. So if we go down here. All right, so our initial display doesn't seem to be JavaScript dependent in any way. Like nothing is blocking that, but maybe at this point, there's a tiniest little bit of JavaScript execution right there in the bottom. And there's also a couple that may be coincidental, but a few JavaScript files that do line up right before that occurs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it might be useful to look at the source, the HTML source, and in this sort of case, and see, maybe there are some tags that are actually standing in the way of that thing that right around 2 seconds starts to. Yeah, it might be hard to view this.
Yeah, this is not.
It's pretty optimized though.
It's a valid point.
Minified.
Grab dev tools. Good to go. So in DevTools, instead of like if we went to the elements, we'd see everything after JavaScript got applied. So instead, we can kind of open this up in the sources panel and do our. I guess this would be this one.
I think if you start left, yeah, okay.
And then pretty print it.
There you go.
Much nicer.
All right. I always like, film strip and just the raw HTML. For me, I'm just old school, I guess, but I like starting here. See what's really happening. Do
you still do alert debugging, Scott?
Yeah, yeah. As long as alert is supported, because it's threatened right now. They might remove it on us.
I saw that, yes.
Yeah.
But I think at the moment that's like a third-party iframe thing. But yeah, that was some hot drama. Okay, so we got a lot of little script stuff there.
Yep, but all inlined.
Yep.
And a bunch of preloads for fonts and some Webpack scripts that'll come later. And we've got rendered HTML, which is great.
Yeah. So that would be our, kind of logo and header stuff up there. If we go back to the waterfall, I think that's what. Yeah. So this is that initial stuff that comes out, right? The logo, the little hamburger menu, the notice across the top.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Some responsive images and lazy loading attributes.
So yeah, it's just curious to figure out what's delaying that first chunk of content in the body of the page from showing up styled like it does around 2 seconds, right?
Yeah. It's not jumping out. I mean, were you seeing anything in the markup that was signaling it to you?
Not yet. I don't know if we even got that far down yet, did we? I think we're still in the masthead here.
Well, I mean, at this point, we're at the.
It could be
this image, though, should have been this, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And none of that shows up on that initial view, which is interesting.
So no
unless that's tucked away. I see. I'm missing the mega menu, so that's probably tucked away kind of in this thing. Okay, so maybe we didn't go far enough. Boop 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 boop. Mega menu.
And here we're 8,000 lines of HTML in. So
yeah,
new luxury. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So here's where we're getting this stuff that did not show up in that initial view.
I'm impressed you found it that quickly.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
But I don't, so I'm not actually interestingly seeing anything like above it that it seems to insinuate that things should be blocking.
Yeah. So maybe not an element, a script or a link that's blocking it necessarily.
There's definitely some script work though, because if you disable JavaScript, it comes out pretty much like right away.
It's a good debugging tip.
Yeah. So maybe something's going on. And again, we could probably look at, let's do it. We're going to jump back, check out
and go back to the film strip.
Well, I've got the film strip open. What I want to look at here is just take a quick look at the actual Chrome timeline and the view. It's right there, Tim. And just see if there's anything that like jumps out to happening on the main thread for these scripts.
Like right around 1.9 seconds, was it?
Yeah, so this is kind of where parsing some HTML, blah, 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 blah. More HTML parsing. Layout work, which I think if we looked back at the film strip view for this, did we see layout work right around there? Not really, just a teeny tiny bit up front.
Yeah. But that's still around first paint, right? Like 1200.
Yeah, that's about right. That's true. You're right. Time, recalc stale. Here we go.
1.9. Okay.
So this one here, which is one of the inline ones, it looks like. Yeah, all right. So it's getting to a point where it's just one of those things that are sitting inside the HTML. And here we can see the parse HTML starts at around 928. So this function is whatever triggers kind of in before there. Yeah, here's our largest contentful paint.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. All right. Something a little funky script related with the way one of those things are loaded is causing that to push out a little bit further than we'd like to see it, but okay.
Yeah.
Anything else that jumped out on this one? What's that?
I said, yeah, we didn't quite get to the bottom of that one, but you were saying it was visible if you disable JavaScript, right?
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, we could poke around at it more if you want. I'm trying to figure out like what it would be that would be hanging up on that.
No, and I mean, we have a lot to cover here. What happened later in the film strip? Because we had a pretty big jump in layout stability, right?
I think we did. Yeah, let's put on the layout shifts highlighting, just see what's going on there.
Well, there was space for the image. That was nice.
Yeah, that's nice. It is preserved. That's good. Did we not? Where was our layout shift? We kind of right at the end.
Yeah, I think it's going to be that modal overlay, right?
Yeah. Okay. Probably. Yeah.
Yep.
That's what that is.
Yeah. So that's gonna ding sites with a pretty high CLS score.
They've been working on that. I thought, like, somebody correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, but I thought that there was significant work because I think the modal was one of the things. I don't know. I thought I remember hearing that modals was one of the things that they were going to try to work around. Although I'm going to be honest with you, like, I wouldn't want them to. Like, it feels like that CLS, if it is actually supposed to be a measurement that helps from the user experience, like, it should measure that, in my opinion. But I seem to recall something like that.
Yeah, I remember reading about a little back and forth over how it would impact, search ranking kind of signals, I guess, over the years. And, that I remember for a client, there was a difference between a full screen modal and one that, takes up part of the screen when it first loads. And there was a discrepancy there. I don't know where it's at. That would be worth looking into. But at least in WebPageTest right now, it's has a pretty high CLS. So yeah, getting that to, just from a user experience perspective, getting that modal to show early on if it needs to show would be a nice thing, because you can imagine starting to use the page and then being interrupted by it.
Yeah, it's always, I think most of us have probably been on the receiving end of something like that, which is always a little,
Yep.
Anything else jump out at you on this one, or?
No, I mean, those two things were interesting. What else you got?
What else we got? All right. Let's see.
We had what? J.Crew was one.
You had looked at I think you had pulled up a PDP page though, right?
Yeah, both. So this is the homepage. And I didn't look at these. Looks like this one's a high CLS too, potentially.
Yeah. No, this is the desktop view.
Okay. Yeah. Largest contentful paint is quite high. What was that? 17 seconds. And this is on a fast connection.
Pull this up, by the way. If anybody hasn't had the pleasure of doing one of Sergey's like meetup events, like the Meet for Speed stuff, they're always very good. So sounds like that is tonight.
Nice.
Yeah, you should check that out. All right. So sorry, you're going back to your J.Crew thing here.
Yeah. So we've got about 18 seconds on that largest contentful paint. And this is on desktop.
This is on desktop on a cable connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go back to your film strip view actually here. So the other thing here, like this.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
This is a big time to first byte.
That almost looks like a blip. Like maybe this is atypical. It
does. However, if you look at all the waterfalls, I know these are only 3 runs, but like if we're looking at 3 runs, we've got all 3 of them at least. So maybe it's something that's going on at the time that we're testing that's delaying on the back end.
Right.
That's totally possible.
About 8 seconds, right? To be clear, of waiting just for HTML download.
Yes.
Okay. And it looks like it's server work step, right? The connection steps are pretty quick.
Right. Yeah. The connection steps are like DNS and SSL are super quick here. In fact, if you could look off of the third-party stuff down here is all pretty quick, right? Comparatively. So it is something related to, the J.Crew server. They are also using like, where is it? Or maybe not.
Is the HTML enormous?
It is.
Not really.
I mean, it's big, but it's not like massive. Massive. I've seen worse.
And the download was pretty quick.
What's that?
Yeah, and the download was pretty quick. It's that waiting period.
Yeah, and so if you look, actually, they are using the server timing header, which I really like. The server timing header, it doesn't get enough love, but so that's like the for anybody who hasn't seen it, the server timing API lets you add basically server timing headers to the request to be able to detail, like you can measure like how long it takes at different steps, or in this case, they've got one, for example, that's indicating that it was a hit at the CDN cache layer. But then what's interesting is, so they're seeing, it looks like there's a CDN cache hit. However, Edge, one of the Edge servers, presumably, it looks like they've got a few things in place here.
Yeah.
The duration there is like 9 seconds. So this is
So it may not be J.Crew's fault.
right.
They
Right. It may actually be one of the services they're using behind the scenes here.
Yeah. But that's okay. So that's a bottleneck to check out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What about those later downloads are pretty lengthy as well. 8
These down here.
seconds. Yeah,
All this stuff.
those scripts. So that could be that same Edge server, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, again, there's an edge header, server timing header indicating the edge is taking a very long time. So somewhere on the CDN level or edge server level, as long as that metric is like, because the thing with server timing is you're kind of instrumenting that yourself, or in the the CDN or whatever. So as long as that's accurately measuring, there's something in the chain there where it's having some trouble.
Yeah. Okay.
It almost sort of blocks out anything else that you see because you have such, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Good example of when the problem is, server side.
Yeah.
A lot of the debugging we do.
Yeah, it's one of I think what is the rule? It's like 80% front end, 20% server side, but in this case, it is clearly 80%.
Or edge side or whatever.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
There's a couple shifts later once stuff does get onto the screen.
21 seconds. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if this is resolved already. That's a pretty big delay.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was
what's that?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say it is, I think, about an hour. So I don't know if you wanted to try and dive into one more or if we wanted to hop off and.
I'm up for it. Or yeah, did we get any more questions in the?
We get a couple. So this one, like, does or can WebPageTest use the server timing header as maybe a feature request? That does sound like a good feature request. We don't we exposed it in the request dialog, but there's nothing specifically we're doing other than that right now.
That'd be really nice. Thanks for the idea.
It would be. Yeah, and I think anytime we can something like that, just bring a little bit more visibility to it is always. It's helpful to help promote it, but it's also, I think, usually, things like the thing that I get excited about with server timing or a lot of the other metrics is that once they're out there and you start to see visibility in tools, you usually start to learn things that you weren't aware that were problems before. So
yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's a great idea.
This is entirely possible. It is possible that the server is complaining because it sees the WebPageTest stuff in the user agent. Maybe. We could test that.
It's a good question. Yeah.
It's a good question. Yeah, because we are signaling somewhere. It gets passed along at some point. They can identify that it's WebPageTest. Yeah. Okay. Maybe. This is just cold and rude. I'm just trying. Poor J.Crew.
Oh, no, nothing but love for J.Crew.
Scott, you worked on J.Crew.
I did. I was on the J.Crew team. And then I was on the J.Crew UI team and then J.Crew mobile. Yeah. Number of years there.
Nice.
Yeah. Good community.
Yeah, I've got fond. I mean, we use J.Crew sometimes on the WebPageTest site still. Fond memories of J.Crew.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, was that the only question? Let's see here.
You see anything else?
Scrolling through.
Sometimes I miss. I get a little heads down and just looking at stuff, and so I miss anything.
Yeah. Interesting.
What's that? Is that a question about J.Crew itself? We're splitting it up now?
Oh, towards the end here?
That is a question about J.Crew itself. Do they? Okay. There was at one point something I vaguely recall where you could break it out into pieces, maybe. I don't
Oh
remember
yeah,
if that was.
I mean, yeah, it's so I'm not on the team these days, and I'm not tightly familiar with where it's at, but I know, when I left a number of years ago, it was very modular at the time. I'm pretty sure you could set up your own build and get a much smaller version of it. I can't speak to it today, but I'd be surprised if that has changed.
Yeah, if it went backwards or anything like that. Yeah,
Right.
I'd be surprised too. Yeah. Good recall. I think I remember when that came out, but it's been a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you had to use at the time the build tools would let you opt in or out of things. I don't know if there's anything easier than that, but
yeah.
Anyway, shout out to J.Crew. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think just from these test runs, we were able to see some common bottlenecks, like we were talking about.
The images thing that you talked about.
Yep.
Some of the third-party stuff rearing its head too. Like saw some third-party stuff kind of coming to play in the blocking for the that Narvar stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely some image problems. With
it's a common one. I mean, that's like, and I know I said like the height width kind of thing, is kind of an easy fix, but there's actually a lot. Usually these sites have a really complicated image pipeline is not uncommon to run into. So like there are some challenges. I don't want to I want to go back and revisit that and not say, make that sound overly simple or anything like that. There can be some significant challenges to get it right.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Sometimes, the image is hosted somewhere else. It's not very easy to get those width and height attributes dynamically, and maybe it's not even worth the effort, compared to the savings. But as long as you can do that cost benefit analysis, but it seemed like most of the CLS issues we saw were image related.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Which is pretty common. Like I said, I think there was one tiny font one on one of them, but it was so small that it wasn't really worth zeroing in on too much. It was the image that was the 99% of it. So
yeah. And the LCP ones similarly seem to be image. I mean, e-commerce sites, you end up with a big image at the top often. So not a big surprise there. But
so would you say that those if we're going to try to like put a nice little bow, right? Like for folks, if you've got the e-commerce stuff site and you're looking at, what are those things that you should absolutely be focusing on? It seems like, would you say that like images and third-party stuff would be shooting right to the top of the list for initial priorities in most cases?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, all the sites that we looked at had HTML delivered for the content, which is a trend that is continuing to improve, right? Like for a while there, we were delivering pages that were just an empty body tag with a div in it and populating the whole thing client side. Everyone noticed the problem. And I think now we're seeing a lot less of that, right? Even, with the same tools that were being used to make those kind of sites react in those kind of frameworks in the past are all doing it a lot better now, right? So we didn't run into any of that kind of stuff in
true
examples. That was good.
I kind of expected to actually, right. But yeah, even in the case of something like the Gatsby driven site that we saw, that initial stuff was in the markup. There was a little bit of a delay for JavaScript executing, but it doesn't look like JavaScript was dynamically building out the DOM and like you were passing an empty shell down or something like that. So
yeah,
that's always nice to see.
Yeah, didn't even see a lot of upfront blocking scripts and styles. More and more these tools are actually giving us workflows that are inlining things automatically, CSS, as we saw in a lot of these examples. Good practices are more and more just becoming common. So it's really good to see for a random sampling.
True. Yeah. But I mean, you're right. I mean, that's the promise or the whole hope, I guess, with, things like Next or Nuxt or really any of those kind of, approaches to building sites and stuff like that. Whereas if they can, most people, if a lot of folks are starting from those, if we can have performance defaults baked into those kinds of things, then, the outcome is like you said, better, because a lot of that stuff can be automated. A lot of that stuff can be built in. You don't have to think about it. That's why I really like, going back to, I guess, the beginning, like the idea of like the VitePress thing with the 0K starter, in theory, at least the Astro build thing, 11D in general,
Right.
how it defaults to basically all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The good practices are the default pattern. Yeah. It's important because, we saw the impact of making the default pattern be sort of like the dynamically generated thing for a while, right? And how people will go with the default pattern, and it had a negative impact on user experience. So yeah, it's a good trend.
Yeah, defaults are definitely something you can't underestimate the importance of those things. People stick with them.
Right.
Anthony, like for folks who I can't actually copy paste, apparently, I literally cannot copy this URL. But Anthony ran the test without the WebPageTest user agent, and apparently got very different results. So,
right, we were tricked live.
What's that?
they tricked us live.
Yeah, they did. Nice. Yeah. Well, thanks for. I always like it when. I think honestly, I love that when the I've said it before, but with the chat and everybody kind of chiming in and stuff, it's always just awesome. I get to learn from all y'all. Dropping stuff in, or like some of y'all catch things like this very quickly when I'm, fuddling over it. I appreciate that. It's awesome.
Yeah. So if you see something funky on a site that you don't own, it's worth checking.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Maybe it's a user agent thing. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, so I think we're out of time. But Scott, thanks for coming on.
Thank you much for having me.
And make this a thing where Scott shows up.
I'll wait for the invite and, and the reviews. And
then one of these times I'll invite you, and then I just won't show, and then you just have to do it.
I'll figure out an agenda.
All right. Perfect. Awesome.
All right.
And thanks everybody for jumping in too. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, folks.